all that conversation. I wanted to talk to you guys more so today about Meagan Good and Devon Franklin. Sorry, I just went on a 3-minute tangent to now talk about what I really was coming here to talk about. It was Meagan Good and Devon Franklin. I don't really look at celebrities' relationships because, 9 times out of 10 they always get a divorce and they're just for publicity. But this was the one and only couple that I actually looked up to in Hollywood. I really was inspired by the fact that they waited to have sex until marriage, because that is something that I'm very passionate about. I'm very passionate about my Christianity and passionate about, waiting until marriage and valuing your courtship process. So I really looked up to them. And then when they're now in the process of getting a divorce, for the first time, I didn't think a celebrity's relationship would affect me, but I really went through my own mourning process. I was like, I'm not even in a relationship. Why am I over here sad and depressed because of some celebrities that I've never met, mind you, and never will meet, mind you, because I don't care for meeting any type of celebrity. But why do I care about these people that I don't even know? And why am I depressed over their breakup? And it just kind of really made me think, I wasn't really depressed about their breakup. I was depressed about the fact that they exuded this quality of Christianity and what the Bible tells us to do, and which is wait until marriage. And they were an example to the world of God's principles. Well, they put themselves on a pedestal to basically be an example to the world of God's principles. And it was basically, their relationship was a test as to, in the mind of the world, not of myself, because I'll tell you what I think about it shortly. In the mind of the world of, whether God's principles really work. And so now that they got a divorce, I'm seeing so many people on social media mocking God, mocking abstinence until marriage, and saying, oh, it doesn't work and all this stuff. And that's what really was the root cause to why I was mourning, because it was like, you guys sat here, portrayed yourself as these men and women of God, and you're waiting until marriage and all that, and you guys don't realize when you do that, you become an example to the world, and your choices can affect many lives and many souls. And it has really, people who are not knowledgeable of God, who are mature Christians spiritually, they're going to take your example and they're going to say, well, look, see, serving God doesn't work, or doing things the way God says doesn't work. And that's not necessarily true. It's a lie from the pit of hell. It is a deception that Satan has done, and he has used this couple to deceive many of the baby believers or non-believers to think that God's principles don't work. And let me tell you what I think about this whole thing. What I know as a woman of God, and I have been a seasoned woman of God since I was 3 years old, pretty much 5 years old. I've loved God from the beginning. He's always been in my life. I don't care what anyone tells me. I will always love him. He will always be everything to me, But anyway, what I do know about God is this. God gives us free will, okay? He lets us make our own human choices. The problem with humanity is we put people on a pedestal when they claim to love God, and we think that they can do no wrong. And if they do, we blame God, we mock God, and we always put everything on God when it has nothing actually to do with God. It has to do with our human choices. It has to do with our human behaviors. And we have to learn how to separate those two things out. Otherwise, we are going to be deceived by the enemy, because the enemy uses flesh and blood to deceive mankind. And that is what has happened in the Meagan Good and the Devon situation. People put Meagan Good and Devon on a pedestal, and they expected them to exude qualities of God that these people are not capable of doing. They are human beings. They are going to make mistakes. They're going to fall. They're going to fumble. It is inevitable. And we have to understand that it is not God or his principles that are not at work. It is the human mentality that allows the enemy to come into our lives, into our relationships, and wreak havoc on it, and allow the enemy to have victory. And let me tell you something, I've known a lot of people who have waited until marriage. I went to a beautiful church when I grew up, went there for many, many years of my life. And I've seen countless couples who have waited until marriage. But these couples did it the right way. They waited a year or more. They went to counseling. They had a marriage counselor at our church. Our pastor required counseling if you were in courtship. And you had to read at least 20 books he had on the list that you had to read. And you had to cover very complicated topics, from kids to finances to everything, before you got married. And many of those couples, some of them didn't even end up getting married, because when they went through discussing the tough conversations about, kids and finances and other very tough questions that we don't discuss before marriage because we're so infatuated with one another. But when they discussed those key conversations, a lot of them realized that the person wasn't for them, and so they ended up not marrying the person. So I say all this to tell you that it is not God's principles that didn't work. It was the way in which the courtship was orchestrated from the beginning that is what failed them. They allowed their flesh, they allowed their lust, they allowed prestige, they allowed resume, basically the fact that Meagan Good is this celebrity that every guy literally dreams of having. And that's what Devon was lured by. Because he basically sacrificed his list. You never sacrifice your list. If you have certain things that you're looking for on your list, you need to stick to that list. And Devon said it from the beginning. She wasn't the woman for him. He said that she smoked, she drank, she was an actress. He had a whole list of stuff that she basically, that ministered to me that she's not the woman that he wanted to marry. He only married her because he was clouded by lust. He was clouded by his lust. He was clouded by his flesh. And he basically disregarded the values that God... sorry guys, I thought I went on the wrong freeway. These things, that scared me. Woo, hallelujah. But he clouded his judgment and ended up disregarding what God told him would be his wife, the qualities that God put in his heart for his wife, and he married her based upon his lust. And that's what we've seen happen in the Bible so many times, where people disregarded, things God told them to do. Ishmael is an example. God told Abraham and Sarah that they were going to have a kid one day, and they were impatient with God, and they didn't wait on the Lord. They didn't have faith, and they went and created an Ishmael. And that's what caused more sin and more issues in his life with Ishmael, because Sarah gave Abraham her servant to sleep with to create Ishmael, and then that caused problems for them, and that woman ended up wanting more from him. So this whole situation with Devon and Meagan Good has caused a lot of deception to spew into the world. A lot of people are now mocking God. A lot of people are mocking the process that God has provided for us to follow, and that is not the right way. That is not what's going on, you guys. You guys need to not allow the enemy to deceive you. If you are Christian, I'm talking to Christians right now. Don't allow the enemy to deceive you. You need to look at the truth and the underlying situation here, that this was a personal situation that happened with just Devon and Meagan Good. And the enemy is now trying to use that to deceive the world, deceive couples, and to encourage them to just engage in fornication. And I just don't think you should use that as an excuse to say abstinence until marriage doesn't work. It does work. I've seen so many couples now that are still married decades and decades now, and they waited until marriage from the church I went to, and they did it the right way. The way they did it was they didn't rush their marriage either. They went through a whole year of courtship. They went through counseling. They had weekly counseling with a married professional. They read about 20 to 25 books that were on a list that my pastor had them read, that he studied and knew worked for various couples. And those couples to till this day are still married. And I only know of about 1% that got a divorce. I've seen like 20, 30 couples get married under these same principles that my pastor teaches. And I only seen about 2 of them divorce. And that's a good ratio there. So I know it works. I've seen it work many, many times and times again. and so many couples still married to this day that have followed that principle. So don't be deceived by what happened with Meagan Good and Devon. I would say just pray for them. Don't judge any one of them. They're not bad people just because they're getting a divorce. They're human, and that's what we need to realize. They're human. Humans fall short. We got to stop putting Christians on this pedestal and expect people to be perfect. Just like they criticized Meagan about the way she dressed. She is a believer. She loves God, but she's one of those people that kind of is not overly religious. She believes in God, but she doesn't live the full holified life, and that's her choice. But she still loves God. That's her journey in life, and we cannot judge her. The Lord says, whoever has not sinned can cast the first stone. Everybody has sinned. Everybody. I don't care if you dress like Saint Mary. You can be covered up from head to toe and you still have dirty thoughts in your mind. You fornicated. There's people like the girl. There was this lady talking about, you're going to cover up, right? Like she went to their conference and she just tried to clown Meagan Good about how she dressed and said, you had your breasts showing and all this stuff. But I guarantee that same woman who's was bashing Meagan Good, I guarantee you she fornicated. I can put money on it. I want to find that lady so bad and be like, you have kids, right? Were you married when you had those kids? I can put money on it right now that lady fornicated to have her kids. Because 9 times out of 10, most people do not wait till marriage. Okay? So she has the nerve now to try to judge Meagan for dressing the way she wants to dress when this lady has her own problems, her own sins, her own issues. She's definitely not perfect. So, I would have loved to be at that concert to look at her and say, you sitting here talking about Meagan Good, but look at you. Let's talk about your life. Didn't you have sex to have those kids? And I guarantee you weren't married. Are you married now? Because that's why you're at this conference right now trying to learn from Meagan Good and Devon. So stop. What happened with Meagan and Devon is the enemy got in. The enemy did all of this, He knew that they were being an example to so many people of God and God's word, and he went in that marriage and he wreaked havoc on it, and he divided them so that he can use that as a way to get into the mind of people and deceive people, which he has done now, and tell them, hey, see, God's principles don't work. But God's principles do work, and I'm telling you today it does, because I've seen it. I've witnessed it happen many years. I've seen so many couples still married today who waited till marriage. And I am going to wait until marriage. And I'm not going to let any person's relationship stop me from doing that. Whether or not I get married, I don't care, because I'm just a happy person with or without a husband or whatever that stuff. I'm just happy, period. I don't care what happens. But I wish you guys the best. This is a long discussion. And like, comment, and subscribe.